right, so what we're gonna do is start with going through each element, how everything was made and mixed together. And then we'll talk about how to go from the 8-bar loop to a fully fleshed out track, covering the build-up, breaks, contrast, tension, release, and keeping the energy moving forward. You know, just kind of how to keep a simple melodic idea and stretch it out to a full-fledged journey. So that's the goal. Real quick, if you want to download this project file, it's available below in the links. And yeah, just play around with it, reverse engineer it, do whatever you want with it. Okay, so starting with the low end, more specifically the bass. Who needs diva, am I right? Okay, so as far as like notes chosen, I don't know theory. I didn't really choose a scale in this scenario, but I just chose kind of what sounded cool in the moment. And then also it's fun to not always have your notes end after each bar or whatever. You know, right here, it's kind of going a bit before the bar ends. It adds kind of some interest instead of you know, I mean, there's a time and place for everything, but in this case, I didn't want to do that, so that was that. For also melodic house bass in general, a lot of it is sustain notes, warm, just like a nice blanket. It's not very groovy, staccato. I mean, there are some there are a lot of tracks that can do that, but for the most part, a lot of the bass in this genre are like this. So to achieve this sound, we're using wavetable, 2 oscillators, both using the saw wave. The second oscillator is pitched up 7 semitones, so creating a nice harmonic sound, rich sound to it. So without it, really makes a big difference. Depending on like your chord progression and your other melodic elements, having a fifth in your bass tone, your bass kind of patch won't always work, but in this case it did. So now we got 2 oscillators here, and then we have a sub at -1 octave. So the sub is adding that sub, which gives you that really bassy sub kind of aspect to your bass. I'll just stop waffling and show you what I mean by all that. So we're going to grab this spectrum. And so look at this guy right here. Without it now, it's gone. So that's a nice simple way to have a clean bass or clean sub added to your bass without too much effort. Sometimes you'll have to add another track, another layer just for the sub, but in this case, just 1 synth, 1 wavetable, and you've got the whole kit ready to go. Let's get this spectrum out of here. Nice deep sub. I think by default it's at -6, so I just bumped it up to 0, and that was nice and balanced. So to get this kind of, it's a slight plucky sound. So we have envelope 2 mapped to the frequency using this matrix section here. So envelope 2 mapped to filter 1, just a bit. And then every time the attack hits based on envelope 2 here, which is 0, so it's going to be an instant attack, and then the decay time of the filter is going to go down just a bit. So it's going to go bow, bow, just like this. Look at here. And then if we take that off, much less interesting, and having the filter kind of have that kind of initial transient, it's going to help it cut through the mix more, because more higher frequencies are going to poke through. So that is helpful, very important. And we have a bunch of automation going on that we'll discuss automation and stuff in the section when we're talking about contrast and energy and whatnot. So a little bit of saturation on here and some reverb. $4 dBs drive analog clip, just boosting it, giving it some beef, a bit more harmonics. And then the plate reverb is just giving it some space, putting it a bit in the stereo field. There you go. And these will be discussed later on, like I said, for the contrast and energy section. And when it comes to sidechaining, very important. In this genre, you don't want a super pumpy bass with your kick. It's like, there's slight movement there, but you don't want, like you can, but if you're trying to emulate common melodic house songs, then this is the sound or the style of sidechain you want to kind of get. You can get there any way you want. These are my settings. You can copy them. And then, so I just duplicated this sidechain. No harm in just duplicating things and seeing how it sounds. And then I just brought the dry wet to 50 because, again, I felt the sidechain was almost there, but I didn't want to play around with this, so I just duplicated it and then just mix it in so it was a bit more groovy. So if we listen to that with a kick, so we're not getting that huge pumping. Like I said, that works for certain genres, but in this case, we're not going for that sound. We got this chorus here, giving it some width here. So we're doing a return channel. There's a preset called chorus bass, using the audio effect chorus. Where are you? Chorus bass, and then, yeah, just kind of giving it some warmth there, a little bit of boost in the warmth, some more width, default to 100. And then we were mixing in here, right here. Boom, boom. So yeah, definitely adds some nice width. Not too much, but just enough to fill it in a bit more that way. Okay, so looking at the kick now, using one of my samples, and then I shorten it quite a bit because when you have a long sustained bass throughout the track, you don't want a long kick and a long bass. I mean, like everything, there's you can do whatever you want, but in general, you want a shorter kick sub, shorter kick punch when your bass is kind of occupying a lot of that sub area. So shorten to the kick, just to groove better with the bass. And then just a little bit of EQ, a little boost in the sub area, taking out some of that icky area that tends to kind of build up. 130 hertz, you know, I find that kind of gets a little bit muddy once you start adding a bunch of things. So yeah, too much power there in the kick. So and then a top kick layer, which was useful during the high frequency, big busy moments, just to help the kick cut through a bit more. So let's listen to it when the actual everything's happening. Just a little bit of difference, but it helps. Oops. And then we have a short kick here that's used for the break and kind of build section, where I didn't want the full power kick to be present, so just shortened it even more, the sample, same sample, and then took out, you know, the sub and highs. Here's how it sounds. So the idea is just to keep the kick going, but I didn't want the full power. And then a sidechain layer here using the same kick, but the idea behind this is, so everything is mapped to the sidechain layer, so that when maybe, you know, the main kick goes away, what if I still want that pump? You know, I want a bit of that pump still. So that's what this is for. The track is disabled; it's not running, but it's still feeding audio to all the sidechains. So this way you can still have your sidechain going whenever you want. So that's very handy. And I think, yeah, a cool thing you can do too is if you want your sidechain to be still present, but you don't want it as pumpy, you can lower the volume of the audio signal, the kick, and then that will slowly, I mean, it'll reduce the pump basically. So in this scenario, I wanted full pump here. And then as we're transitioning, the pump to kind of fade into no sidechain. The main kick also has a little bit of this drum reverb on there just to give it more air, more space. Normally I mix it in a bit brighter, like, but in this case I didn't feel like it needed it, I guess. But that's a cool thing to try with your kicks too, is to kind of add a bit of reverb to your kicks, and then again, depending on how you want your mix to sound, take out the lows when you're putting in a kick. Before we get into the group processing, there is a Reese Bass that was used for the breakdown here. Sounds like this. There's a preset called Reese Odyssey. I think it's operator, or what is that? Reese Odyssey is operator. So simple, quick and simple Reese Bass there. It was just used during the break here. Adding that grit to the sides there. Cool, so we got the bass covered, kick covered. Let's talk about a quick little tip that could help glue your kick and bass together a bit better. You use multi-band dynamics and then fuck around with a bit of the threshold here on the A setting. I had it out that, you know, so 1 to 2, maybe 3, 4, whatever it's, you know, whatever you feel like, whatever sounds best for you. Gain reduction, and then replace the reduction, or just gain match it, gain stage it, bring back the reduction with this. So boing, 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 boing. I didn't mix it in fully, you know, it's just it's a taste thing, it's an ear thing, it's whatever you feel like. It's a mix thing. It's all dependent on your current mix. So this is what I did for this combination. So let's listen to it with and without, and I'll tell you kind of what I'm hearing. Let's just loop a more consistent spot. for me, the bass is down here, it kicks right here, and I find when I enable it, the bass, gets a bit closer to the kick. It's more like glued together. It's more, and it brings it more up front. That's just the sound that I hear, and I think it helps a lot. Which makes it more powerful. So I want to mention, beyond like just hearing, the mix, the kick and bass mix. Like to me that sounds good. Like I can tell it's a pretty balanced mix just because I've heard so many kick and basses throughout my existence of producing stuff. But a visual aid that might help you to kind of an extra assistance. I have this thing on my master using the spectrum effect. Spectrum right there. Then I have it kind of, the settings are changed so that I can just kind of hone in on the sub area. You can copy these settings if you want to get the same idea. And through so many, hundreds of reference tracks and whatnot in this genre, the kick and bass tend to stick around this area. So as long as I'm within that area, I'm usually like, okay, well, I'm probably pretty good to go as far as kick and bass mix. So listen to, or just see this. So when I see that, I'm like, yeah, that should be good. So combining the visual aid with just using, your ears, it's a good combination to make sure you're on the right track as far as mixing your low end. Okay, here is the entire drum groove. Yeah, there's a bit of automation there. We'll again go through that, what's going on there later. But so we have clap sample, another sample of mine. The idea with this MIDI, why it's short and longer, if you have the MIDI then set to classic, maybe even one shot too might work, but either way, if you shorten the sample or the MIDI, the sample won't carry on to the full extent. So if you shorten it like this, it cuts off, and then longer, you get more or less the full length, give or take. So it's cool to have MIDI that isn't always the exact same length when you're programming your drum samples like that. Gives it more realism, which is very much desired in electronic music. So we got the sample there, everything else is chill. We got some of the highs taken out with some EQ, and then this delay adding just a bit more movement with like that. You can hear the tail at the end of it. Not noticeable at all in the entire mix, but when I was working on the entire drum mix, it kind of added a bit more forward momentum with the clap, so I kept it in there. It's a cool thing to try for your own clappy poos. All right, so clap there, hat time, sample. Before I get too repetitive saying, this is my sample, this is my sample, this is my sample. All these drum samples are from TD, aka the Deucer. Why did I name myself the Deucer? What's going on? Okay. Anyways, so hat sample. Beautiful. Bit more processing with an overdrive and a bit of reverb. So the overdrive gives it a bit more girth, a bit more brightness. I find also it adds like some like saturation, kind of low, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like a low, body. That's the word, body. Mixed in pretty low, but it helps. And then the reverb's adding that air on top of an existing drum reverb, which we'll go to after we go through all these. But just liked a bit more wetness in the mix for the hat. Panned a bit to the left. Cool. We got a top loop with a vocoder because I didn't like the tone without it. So here's how the vocoder added to the mix. On the noise carrier here. And then we had another Perc loop. Cool little sample, pitched up 3 semitones. Pan pretty far right. Sweet. Let's quickly go back here. So we took out some of the lows and then auto pan to give some movement. Love that. And then I chopped up a bit of this Perc loop here. Just picked out some cool moments and had it kind of add a bit more random kind of excitement to the drums, just a bit more life. Another Perc loop. EQing all those highs out. And then, so we can use the beats mode, transients, this straight arrow, and then you drag down the number, the envelope. It just tightens up the decay, so it's less. And then we took out some of the stuff here that wasn't needed. I think it took away from the groove by having all this extra stuff here. So I just took it out with the clip gain envelope. And we have another top loop. I think it's just as is, repitched. So at 127 BPM, down to 122, you get a different tone when you have drum samples that are at a different BPM and you do the repitch warp mode. Obviously it's going to change the pitch, and oftentimes it's desirable. So here it is originally. Cool. And then this final top loop is kind of acting as the shaker, kind of wide, high energy layer to the drum groove. Then we have a ride group, 2 different ride samples. They're both pitched up 1 semitone just to match the tone, the pitch of the entire drum groove and the melodics. It's a good thing to kind of listen for when you're playing around with drums and drum samples and whatnot, Perc samples. Try to listen to how everything sounds like melodically, the drums sound melodically, because sometimes if you change the pitch around, you'll notice it just sounds way better, more cohesive. And then especially with your melodic stuff too. So keep that in mind. So that's ride 1. Some reverb to kind of wash it, put it further into the mix a bit at 55%. And so this auto pan is kind of moving it around. And the second ride is using the same auto pan, but inverted the direction. So as one goes right, the other goes left, vice versa. The second sample sounds like this, just before I show you the example. Pitched up, down. Same reverb, and then yeah, they're going back and forth with some auto pan. And then a little processing, some EQ. Getting a bit more brightness in the 10.9K area. Sidechaining. You'll notice I have sidechains a lot, kind of sprinkled out throughout a lot of these tracks, especially like the groups and then mini groups. And so that's kind of how I treat my sidechain. I kind of slowly, gradually massage the sidechains in, because when you're mixing, you want to kind of preserve the punch of your kick at all times, because like the kick is the most important part of your production, your mix. So as you're building layers, as you're adding things, you always want to be listening to, do you still have the punch in that kick? Is that kick still punching through? And the way to kind of achieve that is just sidechain, and lots of sidechain in my case. Some people will just do like one big group and maybe one single sidechain, but for me, I like doing it, kind of massaging it gradually, and that's how it works for me. Okay, so those are the drum layers. On the drum group, we have some stuff that we'll turn off. And then enable. So we got a drum bus. Everything's default, but we have it on we have a compressor. We have the compressor set up there. Mixed very, very minimally. Just makes a big difference though. And then a glue compressor, fairly slow attack, quick release. So the slow attack is meant to let the sharp transients pass through before the compressor kicks in. So the idea behind processing the entire group like this is to kind of minimize the dynamics, make the lower, quieter parts, again, similar to the multi-band compressor that we did with the low-end group, just to bring things closer to the middle, shrink the dynamics just a bit. And then, because if you do that, you can get a louder overall mix by kind of slowly squeezing things together. So that's the idea with this type of processing. A little bit of EQ to shape more of the sound, boost some of the highs, make sure no sub frequencies are going through, all that stuff, which I find with drums isn't usually the worst thing, because sometimes you'll have a nice low end thump in there that will groove nicely with your kick, but in this case I left it out. Then this shimmer reverb we'll go through later on when we talk about transitions. And then a little bit of sidechain on the group, very minimal, less than a decibel. And these again are transition stuff. So drum group there, cool, sounds nice. And then we add some life, some reverb, some space with a hybrid reverb made for drums on the studio setting. I think the decay's probably brought down a lot, and yeah, taking out some of the lows. Also with the EQ, just reinforcing that similar EQ that's in here. Because yeah, if you find maybe the EQ wasn't enough, just do another one. Just duplicate your EQs, duplicate your sidechains. No harm in doing that. And yeah, so here's the so each individual track is kind of mixed into how much I wanted reverb for each layer. yeah, I think it's usually a good idea to have a whole drum group. All the drum sounds kind of go into one reverb, kind of adds to that congruency. And then as far as mixing drums goes, I think one of the main things is having good quality samples. So making sure that the samples are good, because then from then on, it kind of just comes down to volume. And then, so once you have, good samples, a little bit of mixing, a little bit of compression, you're gonna be listening to how your clap and hat kind of play around with each other. So like I feel like the clap and the hat in especially house music, those are your two kind of main percussive elements that need to be more upfront and grooving nicely, especially with the kick. So if you can get the kick, clap, and hat to almost have that nice kind of groove. So I mean, to me that sounds pretty groovy. Like I could bob my head to that, and that's achieved through volume, having the appropriate volumes that so they're one's not too loud and overpowering. And then also I forgot to mention, you can also add like groove to your melodic, anything really. You can add groove to whatever, but it's very useful in your drums. So in this groove section here, there's a lot of options, but I find these between Swing Logic 1661 to 63, 64, those are pretty chill, pretty minimal, but effective grooves you can play around with. And then if you want to like mix it in, you can play around with the timing. But in this case, I had it at 100, and then throw on the groove here, and it adds just a bit more humanization to the groove. So that's what I'm listening to when I'm trying to mix drums, is like just the overall volume and the balance, which isn't that just mixing in general, right? And then you have, like call and response within the drums and like other things going on with the percussive loops and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. It's just finding the right sounds for the specific moment in time. That can take some time, but once you just follow your ear, listen to what sounds good to you and run with that. Okay, now moving on to some melodic house, melodic elements. We have the main idea here, the main melody. It's kind of like an ARP, kind of whatever, plucky melody ARP thing. So here's what it sounds like. So melodic house loves saw waves. This is just a simple saw wave with delay and reverb. And more often than not, that's all you need. Like if you think about Tin Liquor, I think Tin Liquor, like their main lead sounds and all that are usually just really, really nice saw waves. So this guy was made with wavetable, saw wave, and one oscillator, and that's it. We have the same idea with the bass with our envelope. Way more plucky though, less decay. So again, matrix here. So whenever the attack goes off, it's gonna boost the filter to the right, allowing more frequencies to come in, and then it's gonna pull back. Gives it that nice plucky sharp attack. So we got the oscillator there, some EQ, and well, let me just show you what is going on with this delay and reverb, just how simple this sound is. So I find when making melodic ideas, ARPs, stuff like that, sometimes when you have a more simple MIDI idea, and then just let the delay do the work. So this delay is doing an eighth note on the left and a quarter on the right, and then ping pong. I was gonna get a little little funny there, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not ideal. Anyways, so. So yeah, something to think about when you're making melodies. Maybe just keep it a simple rhythm, but then let the echo or delay do the hard stuff. Let the delay do the hard work for you. So that's rocking. This echo is cool because you can use delay, echo, same thing more or less, but there's a little ducking feature in the echo that acts as like a sidechain. So whenever the MIDI hits, the delay sound's gonna duck out of the way. It's like a sidechain, so it's gonna duck out of the way to not really clog up the initial sound of the melody. Gives it more bounce. So we have one reverb here on the actual mix itself, mixed in 27%. Sidechain. And there's a second reverb send here, this hall reverb. Nice galactic choral hall preset. We'll go somewhere where it's more present, over here. So that's nice, adds a lot of space. This OTT is what really kind of brings it out, because without it, mix in 0.5% or 50%. And with my OTTs, a lot of times I'm finding myself, so by default, it's kind of like, it's all like that. But I've been finding this mid band and the high band, just drag them a bit to the right. Find like the sweet spot, but I find that really makes the OTT shine, for me at least, for my mixing technique. So yeah, OTT on the reverb send, give that a try too. And then similar to the echo ducking feature, I'm also using a sidechain to duck this hall reverb to the melody. So whenever the melody hits, this hall reverb is gonna kind of just scoot out of the way just a bit, just so it's not so clogged and washed out. And then, a sidechain on the kick. Okay. As far as like note choice, whatever sounded good against the bass in this situation. Because the melody is not moving at all. I guess it's the same loop over and over again, which is also a very strong technique in the melodic house space, is having a loopy, repetitive ARP or a melody, and then letting the bass progression underneath it change. More often than not, that's more effective than maybe having your melody or ARP follow the bass progression. Sounds maybe a bit more amateur. This way it sounds just cooler. It's more emotional, more something, but it works and I love it, so I do it in most of my tracks. So yeah, I guess the idea, going back to the note choice, was choosing notes that still kind of fit no matter where the bass progression is. Yeah, and then we got this little melody layer. I think I just duplicated the same stuff and then just changed some stuff. So this time we have, I changed the instrument. I changed it from the saw wave to an organ sound. Then since this is a layer, we're not too concerned about filling too much of the frequencies. We're just kind of using it as a background, more atmospheric layer to the melody in this scenario. So EQing a lot of the highs and lows. Way more of the reverb and delay mixed in, so that pushes it further back into the mix. because right now we already have that. Like that's up front. We don't need two things up front. So this in the back. I like that. Let's go up to this ghostly pad layer here. It's acting as more melodic interest. It's harmonizing with the bass. So right now it sounds like this. So yeah, the idea was to just add more melodic movements to the progression. It's harmonizing with the bass, like so. Maybe we can even do that. Hold it. So, well, same colors, but up here is the layer, the ghostly pad, and down here's the bass. Originally I had, I was following the progression exactly, but going back to the idea of when the melody follows instead of just staying the same, it sounded a bit amateurish when the ghostly pad was too on the nose with the bass. So leaving this space here was actually just a cooler decision melodically. I'm gonna clear my throat now. Cool. So this was made using a Krockhausen preset, wavetable preset. A lot of the sound, the ghostly sound, I think, is through this processing. So let's get rid of it. Pretty cool sound, but not ideal for the current mix. We're going for more in the back again. So to move things in the back, you can do that with volume and or effects like reverb and delay and spatial things like that. So start off with this. This is a filter delay or something. I forget what it's called. There's a lot of randomness in this patch, which is cool. Something going on with the randomness, but so there we go. That, and then a flutter. Then we got the dotted eighth note reset delay. And then this reverb really sending it off into the back. And you can hear that ringing. There's pretty sharp ringing, which we control with these reverbs or with these EQs. So that's nice. A little phaser. Nice. And then we got a little tension pad layer here, which is different in the intro here. So that's some nice kind of tension building going into the first drop. Using a audio sample that sounds like, well, instead of doing that, we'll just bird nest. Sounds like this. So I just took the initial sound, pitched it so that -2, pitched it so that C3 would be in tune with, or C3 would be C3 according to the sample. If that makes sense. If not, let me know. So just use that initial sound for this kind of plucky sound, or this sample, I should say. And in the intro, it's doing plum, 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 being heavily affected by reverb and delay. A lot of the tension is coming from this shimmer reverb, shimmer plus 12 semitones, so it's adding an octave on top of it in the reverb sound. So that's nice. So the notes chosen, just again thinking about what notes will have that tension feel, that tension vibe, but still sound harmonically pleasing with the bass progression. So these were chosen for that reason, or that's the reason behind these notes. And so this is like the core melodic stuff going on. I've grouped it together and done some processing. So some saturation. Let's turn it all off. Volume and harmonics from saturation. This EQ3, this is used to kind of tilt the tonal bounce more to the high end. So I took the lows, boosted some of the mids, but a lot of boost in the highs. So found it when you do this, it kind of takes away some of them. It was a little muddy when pre EQ3, so that's nice. It helps a lot. Took out more sub. So again, using the technique I talked about earlier with the OTT, kind of bringing these mid and high bands a bit to the right, mix in just a bit, 36%. This just creates that kind of width and brightens up the sound. EQ just shaping the sound again, sidechain. And that's cool. That's a cool group processing. And then over here, just when we do a little melodic note switch up. This was just to, add a cool crescendo kind of finale moment to the track. You heard a little pitch bend there, right here. It's really nice. So you can just do that through MIDI control, pitch bend, draw it in. I love pitch bend stuff, so I try to find ways to use that in my music. So when I changed the melody, I found I still wanted the original. So I just resampled it and put it as like a supporting layer underneath. It was missing like that extra, there was like still, it was missing a bit of like the extra notes. I could tell like the melody switch up sounded more broken. So by having these still going on in the background, just kind of filled it out more. And then I added a reverse to kind of lead you into, prepare you for the melody switch. So I just took this first note, reverb, reversed it, and then just so it wasn't so abrupt when the melody switched. And then during the break, I added some strings using this off-world preset, which is an analog thing. Strings, off-world strings. This EQ is shaping it a lot. It's taking kind of that muddy sound out, brightening it. And then this around the head auto pan sounds really good when combined with the Reese and the bass. It kind of all sounds like one sound, which is cool because it's 3. Nice movement, very much needed during the break. And then we got this vocal sound, which kind of acts as a human element, which is very nice to have in electronic music. Not always, but it's really good to have some sort of vocal chop, vocal element to a song, because us humans like hearing humans. So this is what this sounds like. So it acts as a human element, and it also acts as almost like a phrase, kind of moving along type thing. It kind of keeps the track going forward. It acts as a fill, because in the drum stuff, I didn't really add many drum fills, if any. This was acting as that replacement between each kind of 8-bar phrase. So how was this made? I was playing the loop, 8-bar loop, and then I sang some stuff on my phone, put it into Ableton, and chopped it up. So the original sounded like this, but we're pitched up 12. So let's bring it down.
Falling far below and far below, we are sinking.
So if you can't find your own samples, just maybe make your own. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be amazing, because when you add the effects and whatnot and pitch it up or whatever, no one's gonna know it's you. So we pitched it up 12, went to the slice mode, and then by transient, changed the sensitivity, so it's whatever. And then, so once it's pitched up, we went to the warp mode and changed it to Complex Pro. Changed the formants, because you can tell it makes a big difference. So, I mean, in this case, this worked for me, but maybe in other cases, 100 formats might work. But so that was that. And then I just played around with until I found that kind of cool rhythm kind of sound. So we had that sound. Then we added a saturator. Juice it. EQ. More highs. Delay. Reverb. Really kind of puts it in a big space there. OTT, bring it out more. Bit of that ringing you can hear. Ooh, let's do it. Yeah, didn't like that. So that is how you can add vocals to your song if you don't like what Splice has to offer. And yeah, just reverse into this kind of pre-drop. Cool. Melodic stuff. melodic group. Nothing on the main big group, just because we already did the core processing on this main stuff. Just a little sidechain, you know, sidechains everywhere, just to kind of keep that punch, keep that kick punch. Okay, so we'll quickly go through these effects before we get into arrangement and energy and transitions and all that stuff. So the effects stuff, we have this atmosphere layer, kind of as the kind of life atmosphere bed underneath the track. Sounds like this. So it's just a field recording of me walking in some snow with a little low tone flutter preset on here. Just add a bit more weird movement to the sound. And you know what I like about this idea is it's cool to add kind of your own physical space into your digital productions. So I mean, when you're walking around, you hear some cool atmosphere, cool sounds, then yeah, definitely record it, man. With your phone, with a field recorder. I have a Zoom H1N, costs like 110 bucks, 150 bucks. You get some really cool atmospheres that are unique to you, and it creates a cool kind of vibe, kind of space to your music, kind of puts it in a reality, a different space. And then you can also like use it certain sections, like it's like in this scenario it's used as like a transition sound based on the way that the volume increases. So I mean, that's a cool sound that no one will ever have, right? So yeah, I got lots of these. Got a big collection of them that I'm also offering to you if you want them. What else we got here? Anyways, definitely maybe start doing that because it's a cool little addition to your track. A lot of people will add like vinyl crackle or fire sounds, mix it up a bit, you know. And then beyond that, we just have a bunch of sound effects, samples, like risers and noise and sweeps that are oftentimes frowned upon in the, you know, producers will be like, oh, you don't need to use sweeps and stuff, but make your own stuff. But I think if you do it at a reasonable volume, then it sounds tasteful and it really keeps the energy going forward. So yeah, I'm not gonna go through each effect sample because, you know, we get it. We get the idea. Risers. But like I said, one thing to keep in mind of is just the volume that you use them at. I think it's more tasteful if it's a little bit quieter and it blends in nicer. If it's just a huge like that works, but it's kind of like, it is a little bit amateurish, but you can mix it in nicely so it sounds more professional. Yeah, and also it helps when you're, in this case, I guess we're getting to arrangement a bit, but when you add some higher frequency, especially in the drums, so like we're adding, in this section, we're adding this little wide shaker. It does help to have, you know, this kind of sweep into it because it's almost like a high frequency blending into the next high frequency, because without it, let's see if it matters in this case. So like this guy came out of nowhere kind of, but when you add the sweep, it just introduces it more gracefully. So those are my thoughts on noise and effect samples and kind of, you know, strategies you can think about when adding them. So how do we take a loop, 8-bar loop, 16-bar loop, and turn it into a journey, a track that has highs and lows and drops and transitions and contrast and tension and release? Well, I will share stuff that I know, stuff that I've learned, and things that I can share with you that I think will help. So let's start with the intro. Let's go left to right. Just, do it. So this is not like an extended mix. So we don't have like a drum kind of intro or anything. It just kind of starts with melodic stuff and gets straight into the drop. I guess, a little bit like a radio edit, but so it starts with the melodic stuff, which is repetitive. It's a repetitive intro, which adds to tension. Repetitiveness kind of creates tension. So we have everything kind of at the minimal sounding they are here. But you can tell like there's like sounds growing in with automation. So it's all going to be, in this case, mostly filter and like effects automation. So this echo is being filtered in on this sound. The filter frequency being filtered in, which then opens up more frequencies for this reverb to start kicking in. So that's a lot of tension being built. It's like, oh God, like we're going somewhere. It's movement, we're driving forward. Same with the melody. Starts off just chill, but again, we got filter frequency going up. That's a common and very, very common, very useful, very effective way of doing contrast, tension, energy, is just playing around with the filter frequency. You can do it with the synth itself, or even just use like an auto filter and just play with it there. So yeah, that's how this intro is kind of creating the tension, and then getting to the drop. Like, so you go from melodic, no bass, no kick, anything, into a drop. Like that's a huge contrasting moment, which is going to be effective because you're going from zero bass to full bass in your face, and that's a nice feeling. So let's go here, and then also combining that all the filter frequency stuff with these effects. It's gonna be a good time. So yeah, it kind of just has like you're getting sucked in. It's like slowly sucking you forward. It's kind of gross, but yeah, we're getting sucked into the drop, and then the drop happens. So then how do you keep this kind of going forward? How do you keep it interesting? Well, let's take a look. So the bass starts off at a certain frequency with the filter. And then you can kind of keep the energy going by slowly going up and up. So, more frequencies, higher frequencies usually equates to more energy. So the bass is doing that. We're mixing in the chorus too, making it a bit wider. The chorus is kind of expanding. So as you're going forward, things are expanding. So that's just the bass. And then again with the drums here, we can create some contrast with the drum volume with utility here. So as we're getting to this kind of 16 bar more energetic moment, we're lowering the drum group by a couple dBs to create that contrast of quiet to loud. So that's a cool technique you can use. And then going forward, we'll get to this in a sec, but the melodic stuff is also growing. Everything's kind of growing and growing, which is the idea behind energy and whatnot. So where the Hall send is coming in, which is creating more space, because without it sounds like this. But then you can hear it coming in. So that's coming in. It's growing forward. Again, filter stuff. I like doing kind of like a bit sharper frequency sweeps near the end of a phrase, and then kind of going back to maybe not the exact same frequency as the previous phrase, because you want to be going forward. But so those are some things to think about. Just again, keeping the effects pulling you through each phrase. And then a way to, so 16 bars is a nice little section, but how do you get more out of the same idea? How do you stretch it to 32 bars? You can do that by adding more drum elements. So this louder or wider high frequency shaker kind of vibe kind of resets the ear, resets the palette. And then this guy also comes back at the same time. So a cool technique, or just a good effective method for going from one phrase to the next. Instead of adding like one new thing, add two, because sometimes one isn't enough. So if you're adding two, usually that's more professional sounding. So if you can add two elements instead of one at the same time, then it's usually more effective that way. So that's what's going on here. We got this new melodic element and then a new higher energy percussive element. So everything's growing. We're still going forward. Where are we going forward to? Well, we'll find out. So then this next 8-bar phrase, we add more energy with the rides. Again, things are growing. Still affecting. So it's all growing. And then on the drums also, there's a shimmer reverb that's going to act as like a shh, as its own like kind of riser, kind of washing out the higher frequencies, adding just a lot more chaos. So listen to this. And then in context, that helps kind of almost like distract your ears, so then other things can disappear. So as that's washing out, we're going to be getting rid of the melodic stuff. So the melodic stuff is fading out, and we fade the melodic stuff out by increasing the wetness of the delay and reverb. So things are going to kind of fade out. So that's pretty graceful. It didn't stop abruptly. So we can do that with, by increasing the feedback and the dry wet of effects. See how that kind of fades out nicely into the next section. So these are all things combining into a cohesive, just mush of cool sounds, right? So that's happening. We are losing the kick once the drum kind of stuff washes out. So the kick goes down to this kind of mellow short kick. The bass is going down in frequency. So we got lots of energy on this 32 bars here. And then this cool down area is when things start kind of descending. So we were rising. And then wait a second, let's cool down for a sec. So let's listen to that in context. So that 8-bar was a nice way to transition to this breakdown. So all those elements, all those kind of techniques that I talked about were used there. Also, the drums were filtering down too, so taking out the highs, filtering down. Because, again, high frequencies equals high energy. So if we're taking away high energy, we're kind of lowering the energy in that way. And then we get to the break here. So I think for bass and like, you know, more melodic interest, I like to, and also a lot of tracks in the melodic house space, switch up the bass, like change the bass pattern or the groove or the rhythm. So in this case, we went from this, and then we're keeping it more simple down to down to this. So it's more just like repetitive, which is creating tension, because we want to create tension to kind of keep the forward momentum going to prepare for the second drop. So this is creating tension and variance in the bass. So we're not getting bored of the bass. And then also another way was adding this glide to it. So I have this glide here activated. So whenever the same note happens here, right there, it's going to glide. So listen to this. So that like alone is a pretty cool, it's just something different that wasn't happening already. So something to think about in a breakdown, or just a way to add variance to your existing bass or melodic stuff. Okay, so we got drums coming out, and then you don't always have to keep percussion going, but in this case I felt it needed it just to keep like the tempo, just an idea of the clock of the groove. So I left this percussive loop in there, still filtered down though, so it's like not fully energetic. So you can hear so that 8-bar was kind of like, I think they call it like the middle 8. It's just kind of like a little transition, a little something between, you know, sections. So that happened, and then now we're getting into the build again. So we're going back into building tension, momentum through the same techniques that we used kind of in the intro, and even in the first drop, just things starting down low in the filter, going up with the filter, delay, reverb, and then drums slowly filtering in up here. The bass will be kicking up too, like the bass frequency going up and up and up. Kick comes in to kind of just reinforce, something's happening. The sidechain comes back, kind of get the pump going. And then it's going to build up, and then we're going to have 2 bars of like and then, so instead of going straight into the drop, which, you know, time and place, but this track was a cool moment where it could kind of just like build up and then have that kind of breath and then release into the drop here. And then real quick, we'll talk about the melody. A little switch up with the attack. So it's a cool little kind of contrast section here where the attack kind of instead of bang bang. It's a nice little palette cleanser to kind of come into the second drop, which gets back to the more plucky sound. So and also it kind of peaks in volume and frequency. Sometimes your default thinking will be like, oh, the drop should be at its peak frequency or whatever, but it's also effective too, just kind of have it really kind of peak before the drop and then kind of go back to maybe a more mellow frequency sound, energetic vibe, and then, you know, grow it going forward. Because if you start high, you can't really go anywhere from there. So it's kind of like a reset, kind of start low and then build back up the energy going forward. So let's listen to all that stuff that I just talked about. Also, I didn't mention how it's nice to kind of hold a note instead of continuing just the progression of the bass or a melodic idea. There's more tension if you can just hold a note instead of following the same progression that was happening before it. So this bass note just stayed the same instead of going back to the same progression. It's like, oh, something's happening. And then, so contrast is also built through taking away things and bringing it back. So a lot of the low end is going to be taken away with an auto filter. So certain, like before the second drop here, you don't want to have a lot of low end because then the low end that comes in during the drop isn't going to be as impactful. So you can use an auto filter or anything just to kind of sweep away the low end before the drop, and then have the drop come in full impact, full bass, and it's going to be real good. And then, yeah, the kind of same concept as the first drop. You start, well, in this case, we started with the percussive stuff is at already full energy on the drop. So a way to kind of keep that energy going, I did another kind of automation gain here thing. And then there's some more reverb with this guy is actually more present, adding more air to the drums compared to not being present at all back here. So in drop 2, so that adds more energy than the first drop, because the goal for the second drop is to be more energetic, usually be somewhat different. So that's achieved through that. And then we got the melodic switch up here, which it's almost just like the payoff, like the final kind of hurrah, just so it's not, the entire track isn't like kind of loopy. So you kind of get a nice little refresher, little palette cleanser at the end here with this melody switch up. And yeah, that's all. These effects are kind of still going forward. And then a little auto filter at the end here, just to take you out of the song. Nice. Hope that kind of give you some ideas and ways to kind of keep tracks going forward and keeping the contrast and whatnot fresh. So let me know if you want me to expand on anything or anything like that. Let's quickly go over the master. So with all this group processing and whatnot, I try to get things really strong in the mix and let the master not really do much. So just besides like a bit of volume and EQ and gelling things together. So let's look at it. So limiter is going to add a bit of volume. So let's just hear how it sounds prior to these effects. So not huge, but definitely a noticeable difference. Kind of widens it, brightens it up more, makes it a bit less muddy with this EQ, and also this multiband compression on 8%. Like it's a slight mix, but I find it helps a lot. Kind of opening up the track, just opens it, man. So the saturator only 0.5 dB on the drive, because like I said, everything's kind of mixed in already. I didn't want to kind of overdo it with some more saturation, because enough was done already in the mix. This kind of just adds a final kind of glue. EQ, a bit of this is more for like tonal balance. So here. Giving it more of a smiley curve to it, increasing the highs and then the lows. This is just to catch peaks before the limiter and the multiband compressor. So really fast attack just to get those really quick transients, just a little bit. And then the limiter just to squeeze a bit more gain out of the track. So let's see what are we sitting at here, loudness wise. Yeah, dude. So not the loudest track, but it that'll definitely work. That'll work. Okay, so hopefully that was at least a bit helpful. I mean, yeah, a lot of stuff to go through, but like I said, you can download the project below if you want to go through this entire thing yourself, steal whatever you want. And yeah, I think the next video I'm gonna we'll actually like walk through like going through a track A to Z from scratch instead of like an existing track. So using, again, stock plugins and whatnot. So I think that's gonna be really fun and helpful and useful for people that kind of want to make melodic house. And yeah, so subscribe to keep tuned in to when that comes out, and visit the shop.theducer.com if you want to buy some stuff.